Welcome to Our Power is Within, a weekly podcast to inspire you to take your power back and realize that you are the healer that you have been looking for all along. We are capable of healing in mind, in body, and in soul. And I'm your host, Chasmith. Today's episode is sponsored by Autoimmune Resolution, which is a 6-month program to help you break the cycle of fear and stop symptoms in their tracks with the power of GNM. Learning about GNM and understanding our biological reason for symptoms and what they actually mean has literally changed my life and my relationship with symptoms and what they mean about me. To learn more about the founder of Autoimmune Resolution, check out episode 76 with Catherine Hausch and visit www.autoimmuneresolution.com to learn more now. If you are finding value in the content shared on the podcast, please remember to like it, share it, and subscribe today. All of this helps me to continue to get the message of hope, healing, and possibility out to more people. Before we get into our guest today, I wanted to do a quick check-in. How is your self-love challenge through the 5 love languages coming along? If you are just tuning in for the first time this month, the 5 love languages are words of affirmation, quality time, touch, acts of service, and gifts. And this month, we're spending the whole month practicing what it means to love ourselves in action through these languages. This week, I took myself dancing, and it was so much fun. I smiled and I laughed the whole time, and it provided me so much dose. All right. I hope that you guys did something fun too. Try something new. Notice your default way of loving and see if you can explore what it means to love in all the other many facets. Our guest today is Julie Tilt, and Julie has studied herbalism and nutrition for 25 years. She is a certified health coach, and she also, fun tidbit, started the first U.S. chapter of the Weston A. Price Foundation for Wise Traditions in Food, Farming, and Healing Arts back in 1998. Julie is trained in the art of Germanic healing knowledge, often referred to on this podcast as GNM, family constellation counseling, biodecoding, applied psycho neurobiology, autonomic response and O-ring testing, and EMF mitigation. And she is here today to teach us all about how biodecoding and family constellation work might support us on our healing journey. And we talk about so much more. Julie, thanks so much for being here with me today.
Thank you, Chasmith. I'm really excited and honored to be on your show.
Yay! Well, I think it's going to be a fun conversation. I'm looking forward to learning some new things myself today. I know that for a little brief background for everyone who's listening, I know that you let's see, you were on the global summit, the global GHK summit. And for some people, they're familiar with the term GHK. Some people know it as German New Medicine. And I know that you are a coach, a health and wellness coach, and that I know that you can use that lens to help your clients, but I also am familiar with the idea that you have several different modalities that you can incorporate and bring into the mix depending on each person and what their needs are or their story or situation, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Exactly.
and so you have some really interesting tools under your belt that will be new concepts for this particular podcast. Um, and so, since I have had a lot of people really go into the science and dive deep into the GNM and the biological laws and examples and stuff like that, just purely within the GNM framework, what I'd love to do is kind of just pick your brain about things like biodecoding or family constellation work and how you're able to discern or navigate what route, path, and direction to take, or what tools to incorporate into a client's healing experience dependent on that person. Would that work for you?
Yeah, great question.
Okay, so let's start with, do you want to start with giving us a foundation of what biodecoding is?
Sure. So I am always looking for excellent tools that work. Um, I'm not interested in tools that aren't going to make a big difference for my clients. And and I love the Germanic healing knowledge that was developed by Dr. Hammer. And and there's some limitations to the Germanic healing knowledge from my perspective. And so biodecoding was developed by a man named Christian Fleisch, who was a student of Dr. Hammer, and he has taken it to another level. And Christian Fleisch was a nurse, and he studied with Dr. Hammer. He also studied with NLP practitioners, and he studied hypnotherapy with with Milton Erickson. And then he's taken the biodecoding, the Germanic healing knowledge training, and created his own system of finding the underlying cause of an illness or disease, and really communicating with the unconscious, with communicating with the cells of your body, and then creating healing on every level, really. And I find it to be very effective with my clients. So with each client, the first thing I'm doing is, taking a general health history and, discovering their different issues. And then I normally teach everyone how to use the tool of German New Medicine, or Germanic healing knowledge, we call it. I teach everyone how to use that tool because it's so helpful to just understand the part of the brain that's affected, um, according to your illness and your biology, and then also what the conflict shock is associated with that symptom. It's very empowering. I'm all for giving people agency over their body and body sovereignty. Like putting us back in the driver's seat, because we've all been trained to rely on doctors to find the answers, to interpret our symptoms and to prescribe the right medicine. Whereas we actually can take charge and reclaim our power and really understand our biology. And I find it very exciting and gratifying to work with clients, and seeing them, especially transform their fear of their symptoms into this profound understanding, where and then they can take back, they can be in the driver's seat again, and they just feel so empowered. And it's it's really exciting and fun. So so anyway, biodecoding is really uh, different protocols that we use in therapy to take the person to finding the original bio feeling that happened at the moment of the bio shock or the trauma that that initiated their symptom or their illness. And once we do that, once we find that original bio feeling, that's when the healing can start taking place. And then the next step in biodecoding is changing the person's belief system about that original trauma, and helping them to create a new story around it. And then they're able to also use these tools to interrupt themselves when they start having certain symptoms, or when they start having negative thoughts. They can use these tools to empower themselves to to really come back to homeostasis again. So I'm not sure if I answered your question fully.
Yeah, so I have some follow-up questions, of course. So, okay, so biodecoding created by a guy who worked with Dr. Hammer, so it does really align with GNM in the sense that GNM is a body of knowledge. It's an understanding of our biology. It's understanding how to link the root cause to a symptom. Or dis-ease or diagnoses or whatever in the body within the body. And then you're saying biodecoding is actually a tool then that we can use as leverage to resolve some of these root um, original conflicts that might be responsible for the symptoms that we're now experiencing.
Exactly, you got it.
Uh-huh. And it's interesting because that is the trick, right? Like so many people we learn about GNM and we're like, this is awesome, all this wonderful information, but now what do I do about it? Especially when you think how some of these original um, you know, these original DHSs could have occurred all the way back when we were so young that we don't have access to that memory consciously. So I'm curious to know how biodecoding helps support us going back into some of those original memories.
Yeah. Well, we use different techniques and protocols that are based in NLP,
Hmm.
neuro linguistic programming, and also hypnosis. And
Oh, okay.
and yeah, and it's really amazing what the subconscious mind stores all those memories, and it's amazing how those memories can be uncovered.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So you are finding with the work that you're doing with your clients that people have a higher success rate when you can utilize biodecoding to help them get back there?
Exactly, and I do find that for for most of us, uh, most of us have main symptoms. Like I always get sore throats. Like my throat is my weak area, or I always get digestive issues or whatever it is. We're all different, and it depends on how our psyche experienced a trauma, and so but I do find that for most of us it started when we were young. It started when it could even start in utero, some kind of conflict shock,
Right.
and then that that area in the body is established, to have a certain um, weakness in terms of being the affected area when we have other future conflict shocks. And it can even be sort of like when you download an app on your phone, you could have a trauma when you're small, when you're a child, and sort of the app gets downloaded in your brain, and you may not have severe symptoms. You may just have really mild symptoms, and you may not even notice, that you have these symptoms. And then later in your life, when you have a trauma, that app can get turned on, and then all of a sudden you have these symptoms.
Right. That can seem so random, but we know they're not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I was actually just having a conversation with somebody else recently about how I learned about GNM, about uh, 1 year, about 15 months ago now. And I felt so empowered when I first learned about it. And then I was explaining that then there was this period of time where I kind of felt a little disempowered because I felt like I had this amazing information or access to this wonderful body of knowledge and understanding. But I didn't know what to do with it. I was lost on, okay, so I understand that this issue in my body is related to this type of conflict, but now what? Like, here I am, and I still don't know how to change that, how to heal that, how to resolve that, how to even access the original root conflict, or as you said, like the original root feeling where this came about and where it initiated that biological program. So that's where it's neat to learn about different systems and tools and support to help us really take this body of knowledge and then approach healing to the next level.
That's exactly the case for many people.
Hmm.
When they learn Germanic healing knowledge, then there's a point where you're like, okay, now what?
Right.
What do I do? How do I resolve all these symptoms?
Right.
And it is possible to resolve, your symptoms uh, just by understanding the principles of Germanic healing knowledge. That is really possible. And there, Dr. Hammer did give some, prescriptions for how to really handle the psyche and to, change the psyche's perception of, of the triggers that are associated with your trauma. And so it is possible to, to have some resolution and some healing, but I find that for most cases we need to go deeper.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when you're not quite aware of what your triggers are. That can be a whole nother situation.
Yeah, exactly.
So rather than chasing all these triggers that you're not aware of, it's like, hey, can I just get back to the root and make some shifts? I'm curious now, is biocoding something that somebody can do on their own, or does it truly need to be done in assistance with a coach or a guide?
Well, if you're doing biodecoding with a practitioner, you will be given tools that you can use yourself, to get yourself out of these situations where you're having symptoms or an illness. And I do think it is really profoundly impactful to work with a practitioner because um, it's a contradiction to the isolation that we've all felt, having these disorders and illnesses and symptoms, and I think it does make a difference to have a witness. It's like, yeah, it's in a in a metaphorical way. It's like it is like being reparented. And I think that's help. I think that's really helpful for all of us to have a witness there.
Yeah, and that makes sense because also I know something else I was talking to with somebody was that a lot of times that we end up with the syndrome that is like the identity conflict, the isolation conflict, the feeling unsupported, and that can really go hand in hand with other times when we get diagnoses or get sick or get ill, and then with that program becomes activated too. So I could see how having somebody there in your corner and helping to counterbalance that feeling of isolation could really be supportive.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
totally agree. I totally agree with you 100%.
Hmm. But I do also know that not everybody can or has the means to access coaches and support. So it's nice for people to have tools to use on their own. And that's something I always strive to provide everyone listening is always practical tools that they can have access to really take healing in their own hands if that's the best option that they have at the time being.
Yeah, that's what I feel. That's the basis of my job as a health coach. It's my job to give you tools so that you understand your body and you can heal yourself.
Mhm.
And really, I want to work myself out of a job. That's my goal, so that you feel, you know, confident in the tools that you have and the understanding that you have. So,
Mhm. And the more that we learn uh, to understand our biology through the lens of GNM, we're more equipped and better prepared down the road should something else occur. Like we're more able to know when we're in a conflict state. We will have better tools to be able to help us resolve conflicts sooner so that we don't have like a hard healing phase. Um, if we do have a new symptom come up, we're more prepared to look back and say, okay, what just recently happened in my life that relates to that, which is really awesome. Um, and speaking of tools, you said that part of biodecoding is to first go back and find the original feeling. And then we work on changing the belief system around that trauma. And then you said there's actually specific tools that then people will have access to in order to like pattern interrupt. What are there any tools that you could share with anyone listening to for the pattern interrupt component?
Well, it's a protocol that I would take you through,
Okay.
and you know, one of my favorites is creating for someone a multisensorial anchor or resource for them,
Okay.
and so I'm using NLP and hypnotherapy, and we're going back into a certain trauma, and then we are creating a multisensorial tool that that the person can use anytime they feel like they're sliding down the slope again, and um, they're having that anxiety again, or the symptoms are starting again. Then they can really click in and use that multisensorial anchor and uh, feel on every level and with all their senses um, a completely different experience, and to shift their psyche into uh, feeling positive again, and being in a space of feeling grounded and happy and vital again. And it's really they're really powerful tools. I don't know if I can give you a tool right now without doing some protocols, um, but they're simple tools that I can that we can get, the biodecoding practitioners can give to someone. They're really simple and yet hugely powerful.
Okay. Now, I have heard or read somewhere, and you could maybe help me to clarify the fact around this. You had mentioned earlier, like that generally speaking, we tend to have certain biological programs that we're more apt to have running. And you said one of your weak points was your throat. So you might experience more frequent sore throats, and other people might experience, something else like maybe more muscle tension, or they get ear infections, or they have sinus stuff frequently. Now, I have heard that generally speaking, that most people just by nature have not a set number per se of programs, but a generalized kind of number of programs that do tend to be their default programs that end up running throughout their life. That's kind of what you're saying with like the throat thing, right?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Your default symptoms that come up, your default illnesses.
And the difference is literally how our psyche, subconsciously, not conscious psyche, not conscious, but the subconscious psyche perceives a situation in the moment of a shock. So if you and I both went through the same situation at the same time, you could go into a sore throat for your healing phase because, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I would imagine the throat has something to do with not being able to swallow, like not being able to swallow this situation metaphorically.
Yeah, exactly.
And I could end up with stomach issues because my psyche interprets it as something that I can't digest.
Mm-hmm.
How interesting is that? Because at the end of the day, that's where it's so interesting to me because I'm like, it feels the same, like whether I can swallow it or whether I don't feel like I can digest it, like it kind of, those kind of feel the same, but yet from a biological program perspective, it literally turns on a totally different symptomatology.
Yes, and the angle that I like to take is that everyone is different,
Uh huh.
and it's the each organ has a different connotation for each person. And so, what I'm trying to uncover is like, if it's the throat, what does the throat mean to you?
Hmm.
And so, it's more fluid. I find that it's more fluid, and people have their own meaning for each of their own organs. And so, it's,
Oh, interesting.
yeah,
Uh huh.
yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
it's not rigid, like following this exact formula.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's funny because I'm sure as a coach, you've probably had this happen where you share with somebody like, okay, well, these are your symptoms and that relates to this part of the brain and it's this organs and that relates to this conflict shock and you're like you say what it is, like, oh, it's something you can't swallow or something you feel like you couldn't hear or didn't want to hear. And have you ever just had someone go, yeah, I don't relate. I don't, there's been nothing.
Yes,
Yeah. But from a
exactly.
biological perspective, like it is happening in their psyche, even if they're not like maybe consciously connecting to it. Is that what you think's going on?
Well, I actually try not to say that anymore. I don't say this is the biological conflict. I just ask them what was happening before that symptom began. What was happening in your life? Were
Uh-huh.
there any conflict shocks or traumas or challenging issues in your life at that time?
Yeah, I think this is where coaching can really be supportive because if you knew to ask me the right questions, you can be an outside perspective where I might like if you just said, "Oh, it's something that you didn't want to hear." And I might say, "Oh, there's been nothing. There's been nothing that I didn't want to hear." And then you could
Yeah,
just ask me questions and I might just start telling you a story and you might instantly be like, "Oh, well, that's it." But you were able to connect a dot that I couldn't connect on my own.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
You got it.
Because I think that's, I know for my perspective, I think that's like the value a lot of times is just having somebody who can really ask the right questions and then can hear you when you're like sharing how you feel and sharing stories because they can hear your tone or what might have bothered you or what part really upset you or where you are, what's causing you to like ruminate or all that good stuff or that, which then in turn would help you to see how you're biologically processing that event, which then factors in where you're going to get the symptoms.
Yeah, exactly. And
Hmm.
and for some people, it's hard for them to connect
Yeah,
to their body. People who've been through intense traumas can be dissociated from their body or
yeah.
disincarnated from their body, and um, so we have to work around that, and we have to try to bring them into their body again. So it can take a little bit of time.
That makes sense. Okay, so you have this one tool that sounds really awesome, biodecoding. And then another thing that you use is family constellation work. Can you explain what that is?
Sure. um, Another one of my really favorite tools, and it's very reverent work because we're working with the energy field in someone's um, family, and it's really family constellation work is really about returning the flow of love where it's been interrupted and restoring the love that was lost. And I use little clay figurines when I have someone in person, and then if I have someone online, I sometimes ask them to use different items that are around them to represent different family members. Um, and basically, what we're doing is we're trying to restore the flow of love in the family. Um, we're looking for we're looking for several things when we're setting a constellation. We're looking for if there's anyone who's been excluded from the family, like anyone who's perpetrated and not been held accountable, anyone who left the family, anyone who was pushed out of the family, anyone who committed suicide or was a miscarriage or an abortion, and then we're also looking for who's not been acknowledged for a sacrifice, maybe. Like an example would be a Vietnam vet who gave their life for a country and have not been acknowledged. And then we're also looking for the proper placement or order that fosters the flow of love and strength in the family system. An example is uh, sometimes a child will step up to be the parent in a family where there is no parent. And that's not a natural flow, and it causes uh, dysfunction in the family, and it really harms the child. And so, what we're doing with family constellation work is we're looking for places where traumas or injustices or dysfunction in the family have caused a child to take on different behavior patterns or to take on even illnesses in order to bring balance into the family. Because the family is critical for a child. It's the family is about survival and about belonging and about love. And a child will uh, really innocently and out of love take on different, uh, yeah, unresolved issues in the family through their behavior, through their illnesses. A child may even die for the family. That's how important it is. And so in family constellation work, we are doing the energetic healing to bring back the flow of love that was interrupted in the family.
This is based off, this is sounding very familiar to me. This is based off, there is a guy who started this. He wrote a book, I think, right, called It Didn't Start With You.
Yes, this is Bert Hellinger, and he was a German, he, uh, a German psychologist, but he grew up in Nazi Germany and had to enter, um, the Nazi army for a time. But his parents helped him get out of it by uh, joining the Catholic Church and becoming a priest. And as a priest, he was sent to Africa, and he worked with the Zulu tribes for 15 years in Africa. And he learned from the Zulus how their social dynamics worked in their families and how their communities operated in a really healthy way. And that was the basis of his discoveries. And then when he went back to Germany, he um, he studied psychotherapy and Gestalt therapy and all the different, cutting edge therapies at the time. And then he developed his own form of therapy called the family constellation work.
How do you connect family constellation work through to support people through the G&M lens?
Yeah, sometimes, as I said, sometimes our illnesses can be from stuff that's not ours.
Hmm.
stuff that as a child we took on for the family. And so, if I'm hearing someone saying the same thing over and over, and they've tried many, many different therapies and nothing's worked, this points to me to, this person as a child took on stuff that was not their own. And so the work that we're going to do is to release that back uh, to where it originated, and give it back to those ancestors or family members, and help the person release and not need to carry that weight for the family any longer.
And you're going to do this through energetic healing versus the biodecoding is with NLP and hypnosis.
Exactly.
So it's a little different in how you approach the healing.
It's a little different. Yeah.
Okay. And you are going to, so you kind of said if you already explained when you might start to look into the family dynamic. So when you're meeting with somebody originally and going over symptoms and history and all of that, that's where you are able to kind of discern what approach is going to best support them on their healing journey.
Yeah. And maybe, after I've seen them a few times, it can also become uncovered. Like,
Hmm.
oh, okay.
Do you find that often when you work with people, you use a multitude of tools for different symptoms?
Yeah, absolutely. I do.
Mhm.
I do.
So you just kind of figure out, and then you might use one tool for one symptom, but something else to help support them in another way. And
Exactly. I find that working with younger people, we may not need as many tools.
okay.
For older people who have more, a multiple number of chronic issues, then I might need to use more tools.
Yeah, that makes sense, right?
Yeah,
But do you find that even if somebody is older and has had lots of symptoms, that does that necessarily mean it's going to take longer or be harder to heal, or just equally as possible?
I think it is equally as possible, to heal quickly, but it just depends. It
Hmm.
just depends on how many different issues that the person has, and for how many years. And yeah.
Now, I know that you also have a background in several other things like herbs, right?
Yes, I've been studying herbology for many years, and I had a business as an herbalist many years ago. But then my husband and I bought a business. We bought an organic bulk food business, and then I was really focusing on the business for about 17 years, and then I told my husband that I really wanted to be a healthcare practitioner. That has been my dream. Um, and my goal for myself really my whole life. And so then I went and got a health coaching certificate. And ever since I've always been taking courses to enhance my understanding. um, but I'm just always looking for new tools and cutting edge tools that can rapidly heal people,
Hmm.
help them get to become free of these symptoms that have bothered them for so long.
Right. Through the lens of GNM, there's such a variance. There's definitely a time and place for Western medicine. We've also been taught that there's definitely certain types of medications or treatments that could actually be detrimental in the sense that they could interrupt a healing phase and kind of send us back into like a conflict state, therefore not really fully allowing healing. And we also know that sometimes, for various reasons, healing phases, even uninterrupted, can be very hard, can be very intense, uncomfortable, painful, even. I'm wondering, um, I guess, just your thoughts on how we can support ourselves through healing phases where we can mitigate, minimize, reduce some of the pain or discomfort, but also not interrupting it. And if you have any insights into how you're able to help clients navigate, knowing what ways will support them rather than hinder.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, the main thing is making sure that the person doesn't have any fear about the healing symptoms. It's really the biggest issue. Besides getting people to actually rest. that's,
Oh,
that's the other part of it. Because most of us don't want to really rest. And that's what the body is craving. That's what the body's needing. And
yeah.
oftentimes, pain is part of the healing. And so, being afraid of the pain or thinking that something bad is happening, that is what's getting in the way of the body surrendering and really, completing the healing phase. And so, what my job is to make sure that that nothing bad is happening. That your body is brilliant, it knows exactly what it's doing, and you can rest, in knowing that your body's doing the healing work that it needs to do. And you just need to surrender and take excellent care of yourself and sleep. So
So much easier said than done.
exactly.
Well, the funny thing is, well, not funny, but so many of us, we end up with feeling so tired, and then we think something's wrong with us, and we beat ourselves up, and then we instantly think, oh my God, something's wrong with me. I must have this, I must have that. This is a life sentence. And we can create a new conflict because we're so distraught over this fact that we're so tired, when in reality, it's literally the body is exhausted because she's working so hard on our behalf to heal.
Exactly, you got it.
Mhm. But, the reality and truth is, like, if you have a job and you do have to keep a roof over your head and you have bills to pay and you don't have a way around that, sometimes it's easier said than done to rest because you have priorities and obligations and responsibilities that you really aren't in a position to say no to.
Yeah, that is really true. That is really, really, really true.
Mhm.
Yeah, and um, so I'm always encouraging my clients to create a community around themselves, so they can get help. Single moms or families. When everyone's sick, make sure that you have a group of friends around you who can bring food, who can watch your child for you, who can go shopping for you. And so I think the essence of health is creating community, and that, having that parachute, when you're falling, having that, you know, that just loving community around you who can hold you in times of challenge and crisis in your family, because we're all going to have times like that. We're all going to have issues, right?
Well, yeah, definitely. So, what are your thoughts though, when you're stuck, when you have somebody who's stuck in like a hanging healing, where now it's not like we went in, we did biodecoding, we really addressed that root cause, and we're going to go through like a nice, deep, intense healing phase. Let us support our systems and let it go through it. But like people who are in hanging healings, they might be on, off, or 24/7 for a prolonged period of time experiencing pain, discomfort, and symptoms. They might already be taking medications or be doing things to try to like ease that. And I wonder if there is, I guess, a way sometimes, because sometimes I do think symptoms from healing can be too much, but then you don't want to be afraid that you're going to ruin your healing if you support yourself like a common question I get a lot, I saw this a lot, was somebody who's got like a severe migraine for like days on end, and all they have to do is take something and they could actually feel better and function. Like, how do they sit with that level of pain for days and not take something? Or when does it become okay to maybe say, it's okay for me to take something right now? I know that healing is still possible. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, and I think that's really important. Yeah, pain is so debilitating. So yeah, no, I would encourage someone to take something, to really decrease the pain, or to help them to sleep, or to function if they really have to, if there's no other way.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, I think we have to be gentle with ourselves. We can't judge ourselves or each other, for whatever it is that we need to do, in our situation. Yeah, no, I don't have any judgment about what people need to do, but we can still get to the bottom of it. We can still, you know, decode what's happening, and get to the core issue, and hopefully, get them out of that hanging healing or that chronic situation.
So you do feel that there are times that us taking something to support like our just ourselves getting through it isn't blocking our entire capacity to heal.
No, it may prolong the healing, but I mean, the body's going to go back to the healing as soon as it can, right?
Right. Yeah. Now, in your experience, especially having a background as an herbalist, do you find that there are times that herbs and things that are from Mother Earth can actually support a healing phase, like to help, like for example, let's say you get the quote unquote common cold or a flu and you have all the symptoms. I understand that when you go to the not the doctors, but the, Walgreens, and you get a bunch of medicine, you're really actually suppressing the symptoms, which is actually not allowing the healing phase. But are there herbs and certain supplements that can actually support the healing phase and bring us a little ease through it in certain circumstances?
Oh, definitely, and maybe in every circumstance. I definitely use herbs and other supplements, to ease the healing phase, and even in the conflict active phase as well. To help someone with their anxiety or tension. And I do muscle testing to discover, what that person's body is needing, and I also teach the client how to do muscle testing on themselves, so that when they go to the store, they can actually pick up different supplements and say, is this the one that my body needs? And then I also teach them how to do dosing. Does my body need 1 cap, 2 cap, one 10 drops, 20 drops, etc. And it's very empowering for people to have that ability.
Right. Yeah. I was going to say, because I was wondering, I wonder how somebody can discern or learn on their own what would be supportive for them versus inhibiting. Because if I remember correctly on the Global Summit, I think there was a discussion that it was actually not productive to take like vitamin C, like we're taught, because that can actually block a healing phase, or echinacea can block a healing phase. I wonder, I guess I just wish some of this more in-depth, detailed information was more widespread for people to have readily access to, because we're often taught like, oh, you're sick, grab vitamin C, take euthanasia, like get elderberry. So we could be taking something without really even understanding the implications.
Yeah, well, that's exactly why I use muscle testing to determine what the body's needing.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think that can, in that way, someone can determine what their body is needing, because maybe one person doesn't need vitamin C, but
Hmm.
for another person it would be really helpful. So it depends on the situation. I mean, vitamin C can really help the tissue to heal rapidly. So sometimes, high dose vitamin C is really valuable.
Okay. When would it not be? Because I thought I did hear like, oh, vitamin C can actually block a healing phase. When would it not be conducive? And how would it block a healing phase? I'm so curious.
You know, I don't look at it that way. I just use the muscle testing and determine what does this person individually need. So
Hmm.
I don't even look at it that way.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And showing them how to do the muscle testing, then whatever phase they're in, if they're in the epi crisis, if they're in the scarring phase, they can use that muscle testing and, okay, my body needs this, my body doesn't need this. In fact, I recently, one of my clients is 14 years old, and I taught her how to do the muscle testing, and she went through a intense illness, and it was great because her mom didn't even have to administer the supplements to her. She just every day she would pick up each supplement and do this O-ring testing and this muscle testing and decide which one she needed and how many and how often during the day. And she's doing great. But again, my goal is to empower you to figure out what your body needs with these different tools. And
Yeah.
from my perspective, herbs and supplements can be helpful.
I like this muscle testing, right? Because the body wisdom, we're tapping into that pure body wisdom.
Exactly.
If you were told that you could only share one message with the world for the rest of your life, what message would be your imparting message to the world?
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that. So, what I would like to convey is that there's no need to fear the symptoms in our body. And if we could all just have a curiosity about our body rather than an immediate fear of a symptom. Instead, what if we were curious, like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what my body's doing. And if we could therefore develop a trust in our body and a real awe and appreciation of our bodies, like, wow, my body knows exactly what it's doing, and it's protecting me and healing me, and I'm so grateful. I think that would enhance our, you know the speed and the grace of our healing in every way, even mental. We could talk about mental health illnesses as well, but that's a whole nother episode, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a lovely message, and yeah, I love that so much. And I just want to say thank you so much for joining me and sharing some of this wisdom and just some of these cool tools and giving people out there listening some new tools to look into and be able to reference and all that good stuff. So thank you so much.
Chasmith, you're brilliant. You're excellent. You're excellent at this. Really, really appreciate you. Thank you so much. You have a really in-depth knowledge as well. So thank you.
Yeah, it comes with 111 interviews, right?
Oh yeah, right, right.
That is a wrap. I do hope that you found today's episode insightful, inspiring, or hopeful for you, wherever you are at in your journey. I always want you guys to walk away from our time together feeling more motivated, more ready, more inspired, and with a better sense of direction, possibility, and hope. Please, please help me spread this message of healing and possibility as far and wide as possible. Share it with social media, share it with your friends, share it in your healing and your health groups. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Also, I started a private Facebook group where we could be more connected, so please consider joining that so I can get to know you all better, and you can make requests in the group, such as request future guests. You could ask questions, you could submit questions for future guests, and so much more. There is a link in the show notes for that. Have fun exploring what it means to love yourself in all the ways, and until next time, make this week great. Oh, and hey, happy holidays. I believe we have a holiday right now or coming up. We have a few holidays. We have several holidays coming up over the next few weeks. So whatever holidays you celebrate, happy holidays and merry every day.